Okay, I think we'll probably make a start, Bruce, if you're ready.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, morning everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. So we're going to have a look at how AI technology is changing the way we do business and specifically for SMEs. It's applicable to lots of industries and sectors, so it's an area that's much talked about at the moment. I'm sure there's lots of options for useful information out there, and it's all developing at an incredible speed. So we hope this webinar is useful for you today. If we haven't met before and you've not joined our webinars before, I'm Joanne Kingsnorth. I'm one of the joint managing directors at Seymour Taylor. We are based in the centre of High Wycombe, and we've got a team of over 50 people here doing all the services you would expect from an accountancy firm, but also some additional ones that are useful to businesses who may want to outsource. Particularly, we've got our own digital solutions team, and our own team here actually are very interested in AI and push us quite a lot to look at all these modern solutions. It comes up in our recruitment quite a lot, so it's quite a hot topic for us to be talking about in lots of areas, not just the sort of technical aspects of our business. So we're always looking at the latest digital accounting technology to help our clients. And we want them to have real-time information and make sure that business is as operationally smooth as possible. So we are kindly joined today by Bruce Penson from ProDrive IT, who's going to share lots of useful tips and thoughts on AI and how it can be applied. I will let Bruce introduce yourself, Bruce, if you're happy to.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Jan. So, yeah, my name's Bruce Penson. I'm the managing director of ProDrive. So, we're an IT services business. We do IT support, IT strategy, and cybersecurity, and primarily for SME businesses in the financial and professional services sector. AI is obviously a big thing for our clients, and they're looking to achieve more efficiency, productivity in their businesses. So, it's something that's on their minds right now.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Okay, so we could just move on to the next slide, Bruce. I thought just before we begin with Bruce's presentation, just to give a snapshot of us here at Seymour Taylor and hopefully a useful insight of how we're using AI as an SME ourselves, really. And I think it's fair to say that probably like hopefully like many of you in the attendee listing, we're in the early stages of exploring AI and how we can apply that to different elements in the business and what is the right elements of AI to use for us as a firm. There is such a lot that can be considered. I was at a conference last week for 3 days that was talking very much about AI and all the changes in our industry. And there's so much to think about that we want to make sure that we use AI in the best way for us and actually with the correct infrastructure in place as well. So the main uses we have found so far are more in the operational side of our business rather than the technical side. Because we've got so many rules and regulations to think about and data. So we're currently exploring AI-powered accounting software to understand its potential rather than using it at the moment. But we have found ways, such as in our marketing and our business development, quick wins that we use for such things as developing content, things that used to take us a long time to put together for PowerPoints that we put together. Actually, AI helps us a lot to streamline those things. We've also been using Copilot for quite a few months. A few of the team members have been experimenting with that more alongside emails and Teams because we use Microsoft Teams within our business. Things we use it for are streamlining tasks, organizing the to-do list, planning the day, and sort of helping us to manage our time more effectively. And I've learned over recent months, which I think Bruce may well cover, that prompting Copilot is a skill in itself that needs a bit of sort of experience and training and working out how to ask questions in the right way. So I think we've also discovered that actually training in the area of AI, particularly in the Microsoft 365 sector, is important for our team. It's not just sort of as easy as you might think just to pick everything up. So we've really been asking our team to think about the training they need in this area. But I don't want to steal Bruce's thunder. I'm not going to talk for too long. I just wanted to give some context and comment on what we're doing and how, as an SME, we're starting to look at it. We're by no means down that road of fully implementing it, and we're always looking at new options. But I'm looking forward to what Bruce is going to share with us as well. So I'll hand over to you, Bruce, and let you cover what we can explore. Just to say, everyone, we're going to allow some time for questions at the end. So there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. It is on mine within the Zoom options. So if you want to ask questions as we go along, please do add them into the Q&A box, and we'll come back at the end and revisit those. So over to you, Bruce, for what I'm sure is going to be an informative showcase of AI.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Right. Let's just move on to the next slide. So um, let's start off just having a brief sort of look look down really on kind of where we are with AI at the moment. I keep having to update this slide because things are changing all the time, as I'm sure you know. But to try and really sort of simplify things, um, where we are, we've got the what I call the chatbot. So this is the like sort of chat GPT, which I guess many of you will be familiar with. Google's got their chatbot called Gemini. There's others called Claude. There's the whole plethora of them now. The Microsoft one, which Joanne mentioned earlier, Copilot, also sits there as well. Although the Copilot name can be a bit confusing. We'll cover that in a minute. There's also a lot of development platforms. So these are AI-based platforms that application developers will use to build AI into their systems. So, for instance, if you've got a CRM and it's got an AI um, function in it, lots of software applications have it now. It's quite trendy to have AI in your application. It's a bit like cloud was 20 years ago or 15 years ago. They're probably using one of these development platforms to build that AI integration into it. So Microsoft have a lot of what they call copilots. So Copilot in Microsoft's language actually just means an AI assistant. So Copilot can surface in many, many different forms depending on the Microsoft application you're using. We're not going to cover all of those today, but we are going to cover a couple of them, which probably be most relevant to the people on this webinar. There's a vast number of productivity applications on the internet now. So you can sign up for lots of creative type applications. There's one called Canva, which a lot of people use for making presentations, but a whole heap of stuff, and everything reports to run, to be an AI application. Again, so it's quite trendy to call your app that these days. And in a lot of cases, it's marketing speak. But the reality is that there's a lot of apps that are building in AI in some form or the other. And finally, line of business applications. What I mean by that is applications that are specific to your business. So, in the accounting sector, you might have tax applications, audit applications. They're building AI into them now. In our sector, in the IT sector, we have our service desk ticketing systems. They've all got AI built in. So you're finding that AI is popping up in all those different applications now in various forms. I'm not going to sit here and try and predict what the future looks like. I know some people who are um, got some very good connections in the world of AI. Some very senior people in the country, and they don't even know what's really going to happen beyond sort of 18, 24 months. It's a very fast moving um, picture right now. So I think really the best thing we can do as people running businesses is to understand what we're able to do now and make the best use of the technology and not try and make predictions about what's going to happen in the future. Beyond a year or two, it's really very uncertain at the moment. So let's talk a little bit about why you should consider adopting AI in your business if you're not already. Um, and I've put this into four categories to try and simplify things. So the first one is the one that everyone thinks about with AI. It's to be able to do more with less. So, increasing the volume of work you can put out, um, allowing you to potentially do the same amount of work, but with less people. Um, and the reason for doing this obviously is, getting ahead of your competition. There's lots of pressure on margins in businesses at the moment, particularly in the UK with the national insurance changes. So there's a lot of, you know, good reasons to consider AI from this perspective. And this is a really obvious one. It's an easy measure of return on investment as well. But it's not actually probably the most powerful use of AI. It's just the most obvious one. The other three areas I think actually, in the future will be bigger drivers for adoption than the competitiveness. So the quality of work is really, really key for me. So expectations for clients, I'm sure you've all probably noticed, are continually shifting, continually increasing. Um, and it's in part driven by, on the consumer side of things now, we get stuff instantly. We can self-serve through apps. If you can go onto Amazon, order something, it arrives the same day. Whereas, you might have had to wait to the weekend, go out and go shopping in town. And, it's a whole different um, way of doing business from a consumer side now, and those expectations move across into the business world as well. So using AI allows businesses to automate things, to improve the speed of delivery of services or products or whatever it might be to clients, and to help try and sort of bridge that gap that's forming between expectations of our clients and what we're able to deliver as businesses. Can also help us add new service offerings as well. Now, the digital skills gap is a really interesting one because there's a common perception, I think, with AI, and it's probably because of the name, artificial intelligence. People think this is like a really sort of complex area. Um, but in actual fact, AI can be used to give staff access to capabilities in software or other bits of tech that they might not have been able to use before having access to the AI. And I'll give some examples of that later, but Copilot's a really, really good example of an AI tool that can actually enhance what people are able to do with their software. And in actual fact, you can then kind of give for SMEs, it's really important because it can give you sort of capabilities that maybe larger organizations, might have been their domain and by, enhancing this skill set, you can effectively operate with a larger set of skills in your workforce than you might have been able to do beforehand. The final one is about business culture. So the new workforce that's graduating from university or coming in as apprentices now, they'll have been using this technology already. In universities, all the students are using AI. There's probably way more AI use going on than there is in the workplace at the moment. So if you're going to want to attract those staff or those future staff, you're going to need to use these tools in your business anyway, because they're going to go to the businesses that can provide them with the tools that they're used to using. So this is potentially in some areas a bit of a conflict because certain businesses are a bit concerned about the adoption of AI. There's concerns about data privacy, that kind of thing. We'll go on to that in a minute. But ultimately, the people coming into the workplace now don't want to do manual, repetitive tasks when they can use AI to do it because they've been doing that before. Um, so really key consideration. There's something to think about. So the risks. I guess we can't really do an AI presentation. We're talking about these just to and none of these are a reason not to adopt AI, but they're just things you need to consider when adopting it. I think most people have heard of AI hallucinations, but AI can give false results, and there's a good chance that that will happen during the demo that I'm going to do in a minute as well. Um, so it's not perfect, and AI also it learns based on information on the internet. And big surprise here, maybe there's some information on the internet that's not true. So you do get results sometimes that might actually be incorrect data. And there was uh, one sort of quite well documented instance of a lawyer using AI in the US and did some research using AI for similar cases, and AI returned a bunch of cases that he then used in court, and they all turned out to be completely fictional. So be really careful with what AI gives you back. It's a tool. It's not, the final kind of truth, if you like. Um, Data privacy is obviously a concern for a lot of organizations as well. So beware what you use AI for, particularly any AI you're not paying for. There's probably going to be no guarantees of data privacy around it. Much in the same way that when businesses started using cloud software, you would have been not wanting your staff to go and just use any old free tool, but the tool that the business is paying for and using. It's the same with AI. Make sure when you sign up, you check the terms and conditions, make sure that there's data protection in there, and there's certain plans on the likes of ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot that have that. I've already talked about the quality of data, but essentially rubbish in, rubbish out. So if you're using AI on your own data, make sure your data's in order first. You can't do an awful lot about the data on the internet. You just have to be very careful to check the results that you get. Copyright can be an issue as well, particularly for the creative sector. AI is very good at generating images, but it's also very good at using other people's images that are out there on the internet as well to generate new stuff. So make sure, again, you check the terms and conditions of tools you're using to ensure that there's no sort of issues around using copywritten material. Right, wasting investments. So AI can be very expensive. And it can be in a lot of organizations, everyone wants to use some sort of AI now. Potentially can end up being a bit of a vanity project. So my advice is the best way to use AI is on robust business processes that you've developed, you have well documented in your business. So use AI to automate existing processes. Don't just use AI to try and do new things or fancy things that you might not be doing. It's very difficult to get a return on investment in those. And the final area before I move on to the demo, just this is a bit of an elephant in the room, but AI is actually very energy intensive. So there's huge numbers of data centers being built all over the world to satisfy our demand for AI. And every query you do through an AI tool is using anything up to as much as believe it's something like 5 times as much CO2 or outputting as much as 5 times as much CO2 as a Google query. But usually with AI, you're not just doing one query, you're doing tens or even hundreds of queries. So very quickly this can build up. And if you're an organization that needs to report your scope 3 carbon emissions, in theory, you should be reporting those for AI usage as well. I'm not sure it's very easy to calculate at the moment. And a lot of people are kind of just sort of avoiding dealing with this right now, but it's definitely going to be something that's becomes more prominent, I think, over time. So with that, I'm going to move on to some demos now. So what you can see is Copilot there. I'm actually going to start using ChatGPT. So um, this is probably one of the AI chatbots that most people are familiar with, I would imagine. And one one of the things I'm going to show, oh, a tip by the way with ChatGPT is I'm showing you through a web browser here, but you can also get an app on your phone. Same with Copilot as well. And it's really, really handy to use for personal usage. So I'm just going to show you a bit of analysis of some pictures with ChatGPT. Uh, People are quite used to asking it questions. But when you put it on your phone, you can take photographs of things, upload them to the ChatGPT app on the phone, and then start asking questions about it. So an example being, I was on holiday last summer in Switzerland, speak a bit of German, but it's probably not good. It's enough German to get me into trouble. But when I was parking in the car park, I'd scan the sign with the phone to take a photograph of it, and I'd ask ChatGPT how long I could park there. So I wasn't asking it to translate the sign. I was actually asking it a question, that was where the answer is useful to me, and it would come back and say, oh, well, you can park for an hour and a half, or then you need to pay afterwards, or whatever it is. And if you get used to using it in your personal life, then it really helps. You think of situations where you can use it in business as well. So what we're going to do here is just do a bit of picture analysis. So this type of scenario, this is quite this one I put together for some legal clients. But imagine if you were asked to do, I don't know, let's say you were asked to look at some damage that was done to a client's flat. So I'm just going to try and put this picture on the screen. Just bear with me a second. There we go. So messy looking flat there. And you're a lawyer and you've been asked to write a letter to the tenant of this on behalf of the landlord. So let's do a prompt here. So Joanne mentioned earlier about prompting, and there's a bit of a skill to this. So you've got to really make sure that you're explaining the scenario when you're doing your prompt and being very clear about how you want the output as well. So can I itemize the damage in bullet point lists so I can use it in my letter? So we'll ask ChatGPT to do that, and let's see. Okay. All right, so we've got quite a lot of information there, and that literally came out in seconds. So might need a bit more detail, but you can imagine straight away that's a real time saver there. And potentially, ChatGPT might pick up on a few things in there that you'd miss if you're studying these pictures. So where this becomes really useful is I've just done it on one picture here, but imagine there were 20 pictures. Then we're talking a real sort of time saver there. So we're just going to do another one. So this picture I'm just going to share with you. So this is a real life example that we use at ProDrive. So probably you've all seen one of these, a server rack. When we get a new client on board, we have to document all of this and in a lot of detail, and it takes a lot of time. And sometimes you get two or three of these. So what we're going to do is ask ChatGPT to do that for us. So let's upload the photo, and I've got a prompt here. Just says that I'd like ChatGPT to review that and document each item and making a note of where it appears. So U position, that's a term that refers to the position in the rack of the piece of equipment. So this would normally take us at least an hour to do for a rack like this. Whereas with ChatGPT, it takes seconds, and it's even put some notes in there that would be useful to us as well. So I mean, for us at ProDrive, that is a massive, massive time saver, and as say an example of where we're using this sort of technology now. So just do one other one here. This is again something that I used ChatGPT for just the other day. So I was uploading a picture so I help run a local chamber of commerce in the spare time, and they asked me to update the website with some photos of new members of the committees there. And the photos were on the website like this, and they'd been put in there by someone else. And I've just taken a photo of one of my colleagues here, but to show you the principle. So I had to get the new photos looking like this. And I'm definitely no expert with Photoshop or anything like that. And I have no idea how the person who did that originally did it. So what I'm going to do is go into ChatGPT. I'm going to upload those two photos. So I'll put the first one of me on there, and then the second one of my colleague Matt. And I'm going to ask ChatGPT to modify the second picture to match the format of the first picture. So you can imagine trying to do this in Paint or Photoshop or something, and hopefully we'll get ChatGPT to do that relatively quickly. Download the modified image. There you go. Magic. So that saved an awful lot of time. And I must confess, I did start to try and do that originally in Photoshop and got really annoyed with it and thought, actually, why am I not using ChatGPT for this? So that's what I did, and that was the result. So I'm now going to move over to some stuff in Microsoft Copilot. So there are, as I mentioned earlier, there's quite a few different versions of Copilot. If you've got a Microsoft 365 license, you'll have this version of Copilot, which is web, and this is the important part here. You see that says enterprise data protection. Now, I mentioned earlier about privacy concerns with some of these chat tools. If you've got a Microsoft 365 license, you can use this version of Copilot. It's called Copilot Chat with the data protection. That means the data never leaves your Microsoft 365 environment. And as I say, there's no additional cost to that. This will only query data you upload to it or data on the web, which is why it says web. If you pay an additional fee, you get the ability to query your business data as well, which is data in SharePoint, email, that kind of thing. So that's the sort of difference between the two of them. But what we're going to do to start with is look at Teams meetings. So let's just go to Microsoft Teams. And we'll go to previous meetings. And what we get, if I can just find it. So here is a meeting this was actually a webinar that I ran last week. And one of the big benefits of Copilot is it takes these meeting notes. So this is the version of Copilot you have to pay for. So you can see what it's done here is it's actually summarized each section of the webinar that I presented. So it's worked out, I didn't give it these categories, it's worked all these out. And if I want to get more information on, say, the cost comparison of webinar software, I can drill down into that. And then it's given me a breakdown of everything that I talked about in the webinar. So if you, for instance, were to miss, let's say you were using this for an internal meeting, and you missed the meeting because something else overran or you got back to the office late, you could then go in here after the meeting's been completed and you can see all the details of what's gone on during the meeting, read through and catch up with it. Obviously not an excuse to miss meetings, but if you were to do that, then you've got the confidence then that you can go in and catch up on some stuff. There's other things that Copilot does as well. So it can pick up if you get mentioned in it. This was just a webinar, so that didn't happen. But if we had a meeting and people were talking about me, then I could see if I was mentioned in there. And what you can also do is you can ask questions about the meeting. So I can say, I don't know, what is the best value webinar software? Now, there might be some Microsoft biases in this question, of course, because it is Microsoft software I'm using to ask it, but let's see what it says. And again, this will just pull information out of the meeting. So there you go. It's actually talking about what I was discussing during the meeting. And the best thing is it actually gives you a link to that point in the transcript as well. So if I want to go to the point where this particular part was discussed, I can click that. There you go. Sorry, it says on screen there. So it actually explains what I said during the meeting there. So really, really useful. Just to let you know that Copilot gets this information from the transcript. So Teams writes a transcript of the meeting, and that's how Copilot queries it. There are some additional features coming shortly, I believe, as well, where Copilot will actually summarize the meeting and give you this kind of information during the meeting. So you'll see it appearing on the right-hand side during your Teams meeting. Can't demo that today, unfortunately, because it's not quite released yet. Right. So the next thing I just wanted to show you, if you're creating a new meeting in Teams, there's some additional features here as well, which you get with Copilot. So you'll have the option anyway to create an agenda in Teams, but you've also now got the option of creating the agenda in Copilot as well. So I can ask it to create an agenda for, I don't know, say, please create an agenda for a Copilot presentation. And these notes, by the way, appeared during the meeting for all the participants of it. So we've got a little agenda there. So Copilot can help us with that as well. Right, so let's move on to Outlook. So I know a lot of people live in Outlook most of the time. So we're going to go through just a couple of time savers. In fact, I'm actually going to start with an email. So we've got a long email conversation here about arranging this particular webinar. So and imagine a scenario where you've been out of the office for a while and then you come back in and you've got 30 emails and there's a big long chain there and you think, oh my God, how am I going to read all of that? Well, now you don't need to worry because you can click on Summary by Copilot at the top here. And Copilot will trawl through this entire chain and it will give you a summary at the top there of all the points. So you don't need to go through and read the entire email. So it's a huge time saver. This is something I use all the time. And if you're one of these people that gets emails, 100 emails a day or whatever, then that's a big, big time saver. Also, actually, go back into that email. Something else that's really useful is now, if I wanted to create a meeting, so say we'd agreed a point to schedule this webinar, but then I wanted to create a meeting to discuss it, I can click on this Schedule with Copilot button here. And what it will do is it will create me an agenda for the meeting based on the information in the email. I'd obviously set it up for all the people in the email. It finds a time in my calendar that I'm available, and then I can, adjust it if I want to, and I can create that meeting. And it's even worked out a title for me as well. So again, just a really big time saver. I actually sort of forget about these things now because I use them so frequently that you kind of forget that it's actually AI that's doing this. It just becomes another function in Outlook. Just a word here. You'll notice I'm using the web version of Outlook. If anyone's familiar with that or familiar with new Outlook, then you really need to use one of those two to get the best experience from Copilot. There is Copilot in traditional Outlook as well, but you don't get all the functionality that you get if you're using new Outlook. So definitely worth looking at that. But if you want to try it, new Outlook is very, very similar to the web-based version. So we'll discard that, but what we'll do is we'll look at another way of scheduling a meeting. So I'm just going to suggest I want an internal meeting now. So what I've done, if you click on the Copilot symbol here, sorry, it actually gives you some prompts around meetings, but let's put my own prompt in. So I'm going to schedule a 2-hour meeting sometime in the next 2 weeks to review our last quarter performance. And these are two colleagues of mine, and I want a slot that all attendees can make. So let's see what Copilot does here. Okay, so it's noticed that Matt Taylor has a busy calendar, which I know is definitely correct. So let's see what Copilot's got. So I'm not so this is an example of Copilot not always working because what it's given me here is a slot that Matt's not available in. So that's not actually that useful. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to say, can you find me a slot that everyone is available? Right, so let's try again. So I'm going to have a look at that. So there you go. So it's found a slot now that Matt, Chris, and I are available. It's actually suggested 3 potential slots, so I could choose one of these. And then I can book the meeting. It's not come up with a brilliant title for this one. But, we can also draft um, a agenda, if we want to. So last quarter review. And again, it should create a suggested agenda for us. There we go. So we can keep it, make it longer, change tone, all this kind of stuff. So again, just a time saver when using Outlook, but most people use Outlook a lot of the time. And so these small things, they all add up to quite significant um, saving in time. You can also use Copilot to review unread emails. You can use it to um, I believe there's a new function coming out very shortly to prioritize your emails, so auto prioritization of your inbox. So all this stuff's a great way of improving your own kind of productivity, getting over that kind of uh, that sort of overload of email, which a lot of people suffer from. So I'm going to move on to Excel now. And we've got some sample data here, and I'm going to show you a few areas. So I mentioned earlier that about closing the skills gap, and I think this is a really good example in Excel. Now, a lot of people use Excel, but not many people use too many formulas within Excel. It's just using the stuff that's in the menu bar. Advanced formulas are a bit more of uh, the sort of trained Excel skill that some people have, but most people don't use them. So I'm going to show you a few things we can do here with Copilot that probably most people wouldn't be doing normally. So let's just start off with some simple prompts. So Copilot can analyze data in an Excel sheet quite quickly. So if we opened up this and we want to know which products we make the most money from, so we'll ask Copilot that, and hopefully we'll get a fairly quick response. There you go. So it's done some analysis. It's actually created a new chart there, which we can add in. But it's also given me the response below, but I can add that chart in that shows the information it's just created. So there we go. Now let's be a bit more creative here. Now, one of the things that I find in Excel is a bit of a nightmare, but incredibly useful is conditional formatting. So conditional formatting's pretty easy when it's just one format or you're using one of the pre-built formats that you get in the menu here. But if you want to do anything a little bit more customized, it becomes a bit more complicated. So we're going to ask Copilot to format this unit price column. So it's green if it's above the average, or red if it's below the average. So let's ask it to do that and see what happens. There you go. So it's told us what it's doing, and we've got the option to apply that now. And there we go. So definitely easier for me than messing around with conditional format formulas. So let's be really adventurous now and do a more complex formula. So what we're going to do is create a new column and segment the data in this quantity column. So what we're going to ask, I'll just scroll that so everyone can see. So we want a formula to return a value of A when the value in column G is greater than 200. So it's going to segment this into A, B, C, or D based on the number or the number in the quantity column. So let's ask Copilot to do that, see where we end up. Okay, so there you go. It's given us the option to insert the column. And what you'll see is we've now got a segment column. If I sort this, you should see it aligns up nicely. Just checking Copilot's got it right, and it has. So we're going to do one more formula in here, and that's a lookup formula. So I know in the accounting sector, people use lookup formulas a lot. Maybe not everyone else. So we've got a small table here that says segment A's are high performers, B's are medium performers, C's average performers. And what I want to do now is to get Excel to look up in that table there and put the appropriate description in a new column here. So we're going to ask it to do that. It's always useful, you don't have to, but it's always useful when you're referring to columns in Copilot in Excel to put them in commas there, inverted commas, just so it knows that you're talking about a column, just to be very clear. Okay, so let's try that now. Might take a little bit longer. Whilst that's churning away, I'm just showing you here the formula that it's come up with for the segment column. So it's not a super complex formula, but it's definitely not a simple one. So, if you're not an Excel expert, that might have taken you quite a long time and trawling through web pages to get that formula without using Copilot. The lookup formulas are usually a bit more complex still. This is taking longer than it normally takes. As I said earlier, these demos don't always run smoothly because we are dealing with AI. It's not just a feature. Okay, so it's not worked. So that's great. We'll try it once more. It may work the second time, it may not. If not, we'll move on to another tab in a second. I don't think we're going to get any luck with this one. It normally works anyway. You'll have to trust me on that one. So we'll stick with Excel just for another minute or jump onto something else. So let's give up on that one. I've got some other data here. So this was just some marketing data. Just another demo I wanted to show you. I wanted to turn this column here, which has got a load of web addresses, just extract a domain name from it. Again, I could probably work this out by going on the internet and looking for formulas, but I can also ask Copilot to do it. So I've just asked it to extract a company domain name from that. So hopefully we'll have more luck with that than we did before. So there we go, really quick. So hopefully that gives you a good sort of flavor of what you can do with Excel. There's just one other thing that's really handy. So this is a load of uh, customer feedback information. So we collect um, data on all the sort of tickets and everything we work on at ProDrive. So I've just done an extract from that. As you can see, there's about 2,000 records there. If I wanted to analyze all of this and get some information on it, that's going to take me ages with 2,000 records. But what I can do is ask Copilot to review that information. So um, let's just ask it to give me a summary of this feedback. And what you'll notice here is I've not actually told it to refer to a particular column, so it's trawling all this data. And hopefully we'll get something useful back in just a second. There you go. So it's giving me areas of positive feedback, areas for improvement, mixed feedback, praise for individual staff members, and some recurring technical issues. So these are the kind of things that we would then drill down into. And I could ask Copilot more questions about these things as well if I wanted to. But I'm just going to ask it one more question. So this feedback all comes, so at ProDrive we phone our clients to ask for the feedback, or we try to anyway, rather than sending emails. So I just want to know who's um, how many calls were made by each survey method or caller. So just trying to get some data on the how these calls are made. And there you go. It's told me who's made the most calls. So really quick, much better than going through and running all sorts of formulas on this table. So for unstructured data, such as this, Excel is a really, really good way using Copilot of pulling useful information out. So time's moving on, so I'm just going to show a couple more things. So let's just move on to Word documents. So I've got a couple of documents that I'm just going to show. So there's I've got two sets of these are just sort of sample sets of company accounts. And what I've done is I've made a few changes in one of them. So that's the document, but can't remember what the changes were. So I'm going to highlight those two documents. I'm going to go into Copilot. Where is it? So this is a classic Microsoft case of moving the buttons. Oh, it's here now. Uh, oh, there we go. It's compare files. Microsoft, if you haven't noticed before, are very good at moving the buttons in their software, and this used to be a button at the top there. Anyway, what it's done is it's compared those two documents, and it's highlighted where I've made those changes. So you can see really useful there. Now, it doesn't work on different revisions at the moment. You actually have to have two separate files. But, if you've got, for instance, two proposals that you've sent to a client, you can't remember what the difference is between them. Really good way of finding that out. Now, another thing we can do is we can use Copilot to create new documents based on other documents. So if we've got though one of those sample sets of accounts, so same thing I just showed you, we might want to create a summary letter based on this. I mean, this could be any kind of document. It doesn't have to be accounts. It could be a proposal. You want to create an executive summary. So what we're just going to do is go into a new Word document, and we're going to ask Copilot to, um, there we go. And I'm going to refer to those accounts there. So I'm asking it to turn that financial statement into plain summary language, but you could use this, and I'm stating who the document's intended for, but you could say, you know, please produce an executive summary of this proposal for a director of a small business, whatever you want to do. We're just looking at summarizing a document here. So Copilot's going to go through that long set of accounts, and here we go. It's done a summary. So if I wanted just to summarize that, I was sending it through to a client, I could put this summary in an email, call it executive summary, and again, saving a bunch of time. Being that it's Copilot and it's AI, you probably want to double check this information before you send it, but it's a lot quicker than going through and doing an executive summary yourself. Right, so I'm going to show one more thing before we move to questions. Um, Now, Copilot's got a feature in it called agents, and I'm going to explain what this is here. So this is our policies and procedures library at ProDrive. And if I tell you what, I'll go to, yeah, I'll do the information security one. We've got lots of documents in here. Now, imagine a scenario where you've got someone fairly new in the business and they have various security questions. They probably ask, their line manager could ask me. Either way, someone's then got to go through, or someone's got to respond to those questions. Could be HR questions as well as another example of where this kind of thing works. Um, there's always going to be someone. It might be your operations manager, business manager, practice manager, and they keep getting fielded questions, and the answers are in your policies and procedures, and they might know the answers. They might actually think, I better look that up just to make sure I'm giving the right answer. So it ends up taking loads of someone's time. So you can create something called an agent, which is basically um, telling Copilot its source of information is those documents that I've just ticked there. So I've just gone and ticked all the documents in our information security library. And any questions I ask Copilot now, it's only going to refer to these documents. So imagine those questions that I was talking about earlier that people keep escalating to you in your organization. Well, instead of you answering those questions, you could just give them this agent, and you can share these agents in teams as well, by the way. So let's just say if I got the question, or someone else was asking me this, what should I do if a client requests that we provide third-party access to their IT systems? So we'll ask the agent that, and the agent's going to read our information security policies and procedures, and it's going to give me the correct answer on that, not the one that I might think it is. There we go. And what you're seeing here as well is when it's given the answer, it's referred to the document working on client IT systems. So sounds like the right one. And I could go in and read that document if I wanted to. So again, just imagine that's, HR. A lot of businesses have a large kind of number of HR documents, policies, procedures, your staff handbook, all that kind of stuff. If you provide an agent to your staff so they can ask the agent any HR questions rather than asking, the office manager or HR manager, it can save a huge amount of time and they'll probably get better answers as well. So I think on that, it's probably time for questions. So I'm just going to stop the screen share and hand back.
Thank you, Bruce. I think the key thing for me throughout that whole presentation of what you were showing us was that your point about AI feels really complex and there's a lot out there that it feels really difficult. But actually, just using it to do the tasks we're all doing every day, summarizing feedback or scheduling meetings, actually will just save the time. So I think, the key point for me there was it's not as difficult as it feels from some of the marketing things that we're seeing. And also, one thing to tell my teenage children, AI is the tool, not the truth, is the key takeaway that I'm taking home tonight for the dinner table. But
Yeah,
let's look at some
absolutely.
questions. Okay, let's look at some questions. So let me just open up the Q&A box. So the first question is, what stuff that have you shown that you've shown today is free for use, and what needs to be paid for?
Yeah. So it's a bit of a minefield when looking at what you can use for free. So the chatbots that you see, the ChatGPT, Gemini, etc., there's free versions of all of them. But be very careful what you use them for because there's no privacy guarantees in them. So you can use those for free. They all have a paid for plan. From the Microsoft Copilot perspective, if you have a Microsoft 365 license, you can use Copilot Chat that you can upload data to. You can use it for uh, querying web data, and that gives you the sort of protection that I mentioned earlier. So it stays in your Microsoft 365. If you want all the integration with your Microsoft apps. So the stuff I was showing you in Outlook, in Teams, in Excel, then there is a additional license you need called Microsoft 365 Copilot, and which I say it's confusing because anything AI from Microsoft is Copilot, but Microsoft 365 Copilot, it's about £300 per person per year. Now, that for a lot of organizations, they get a bit put off by that because it's quite often more than the cost of your standard Microsoft 365 license. But then if you put together some of the things that we've gone through and just try and work out how much time that saves you, then particularly the stuff within Outlook, the agents that I showed just at the end there, that can very easily add up to quite a lot of time. And £300 all of a sudden doesn't seem like that large a sum of money. Um,
Mm,
yeah, that's the
absolutely.
summary of it.
I think as a business that sells time for money, then
Yeah.
absolutely we could measure that quite quickly. Okay, another question that we've had is there any top tips that you would recommend for staying up to date with all the AI developments in this area?
Top tips. If you're looking at the kind of the more general stuff like the Microsoft, there's lots and lots of content on YouTube. So, I mean, we do this as well at ProDrive on our YouTube channel, but there's lots of other YouTube channels out there of people just posting videos, like the stuff we've done today, kind of bite-size bits of using Microsoft Copilot or some of the other AI tools around. So I'd consider that as a really good source. And if you just subscribe, find a couple of channels that present things in the way that you best want to consume them. Subscribe to them and then just check up it when something new comes out. So it's a really good way of doing it. Um, there's obviously lots of events and that kind of thing on AI, and some of them can be useful, but a lot of them are probably what I tend to find is there's lots of things around AI that's pitched at quite a sort of high level, and actually where it makes a difference to people day to day is more the kind of practical stuff. If you can actually save some time genuinely or automate some things or do something better for your clients, and it's not fiendishly complicated or expensive, then that's actually where people will start to get a benefit from using AI and start to get an enthusiasm for using it more. If you start off at too high or too complex a level, then it can be off-putting. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes quite expensive as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree. Another question we've had is, should we be concerned about the data going into AI and what happens to it?
Yes. Um, Short answer. So, look, as I mentioned earlier, there's various different subscriptions, and they have different guarantees around data security and privacy and that kind of thing. So the the first thing to be really careful about is reading terms and conditions of the AI tools you're going to use to work out what they're actually doing with their data. So it's the same really as any other kind of business application, you should always be checking what the company you're signing up with is going to do with your data. Um, the same, applies to AI. The main difference of AI is if someone's got your data within a system that has AI on it, then it's potentially going to be found very quicker than if, well, much quicker than if there wasn't an AI tool in front of it. But the risks are ultimately the same. So always check terms and conditions, and also make sure if you're using AI in your organization, you're providing your staff with the right tools, the safe tools to use. And it's also a consideration that if you're saying to your staff, don't use AI, will they still be using it anyway? And if that's been your approach, then they might be using free tools that aren't safe. So lots to think about there. And I think it's not just a case, yes, read terms and conditions, but also think about what you're doing in your organization. Make sure you've got right policies and procedures in place. Make sure your staff are on board and you're doing training with them. You mentioned earlier, John, about training people. That's
Mm.
really, really important. This is new technology, and people don't really necessarily know what happens when they press the send button. So, making sure everyone's aware. I mean, ultimately, you can put whatever restrictions and things in place that you want, but people will do what they like. So, unless they understand the consequences of what they're doing, then there's always going to be quite a large element of risk there.
Yeah, it's like any other policy or procedure, isn't it? You must talk about it as well as put it out there for them. Okay, we've got
Absolutely.
time for one more question, which is there a way to measure the return on investment on your AI investment as a business?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. So I guess it's like any new project really. You've got to make sure that you've got clear goals when starting out with an AI project. If you don't, then you're probably not going to get a return on investment. Um, but yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier during the presentation. If you start with looking at trying to use AI to improve existing business processes that you understand well, you've got well documented, and you already have some idea about how much time it's taking you or what it's costing you, then it's much easier to try and demonstrate a return on investment by using AI to improve that process. If you're trying to do something new, then it becomes much more of a challenge, because there's a lot of upfront cost in putting AI in place at times, particularly on larger projects, and then it becomes much tougher to measure, return on investment there. So I'd say start small, start simple, start with existing business processes that you know and understand really well.
Great answer to a tough question at the end, I think. Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to mention that we have prepared a short document to accompany this webinar, which is a guide to AI for SMEs. We will forward that to everyone that's attended today after the webinar. If you have got any questions or want to chat more to either of us, do get in contact. We'll share our contact details, link in with us. We'd love to hear from you. So all that remains, I think, is a big thank you, Bruce, for all your insights today. Really useful to all of us. I know I've picked up some tips and written a few bits down to take forward, so I hope that's true for everyone. So thanks everyone for watching the webinar, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Joanne. Thank you, everyone.